I always felt like I could do anything. That's the main thing people are controlled by. Thoughts, their perception of themselves. They're slowed down by their perception of themselves. If you're taught you can't do anything, you won't do anything. I was taught I could do everything. Go listen to all my music. It's the codes of self-esteem. It's the codes of who you are. If you're a Kanye West fan, you're not a fan of me, you're a fan of yourself. You will believe in yourself. I'm just the espresso. I'm just the shot in the morning to get you going, to make you believe that you can overcome that situation that you're dealing with all the time.
With a total of 10 studio albums, 6 mixtapes, 3 collaborative projects, and 1 demo album, Kanye West is amongst those rappers with a not only lengthy, but complex, inspiring, and culture-shifting discography. Today, we will be taking a look at every one of his projects, ranking them as we go. Starting us off at number 16, we have Kanye's first 5 mixtapes, consisting of 4 tapes before the college dropout and 1 predating the release of Graduation. While these mixtapes do not represent a defining moment in Kanye's career, they do have some decent tracks on the later tapes, with 2002's Get Well Soon and 2003's I'm Good. Kanye's production sounded very unmixed, unsteady, and rough at times, often straying away from the iconic soul samples his first 2 studio albums were known for. However, on Con the Louis Vuitton Time, the production value and lyrics drastically increased to accommodate an early, rough-staged college dropout feel, including features from Jay-Z and 50 Cent, his future rival. This mixtape made for a much more pleasant listen than the first 2, being my second favorite of the 5 mixtapes by Kanye. Just under Con the Louis Vuitton Time is Kanye's instrumental soul mix, consisting purely of his beats relying heavily on flip samples, as well as tracks that inspired him to come up with future beats for the college dropout, all soul-related. For an instrumental project / DJ mix, this album is quite enjoyable, almost being my second favorite Kanye mixtape. Now, at the height of our 15th spot, we reach Kanye's 5th and final mixtape, Can't Tell Me Nothing, featuring acts from Good Music such as Big Sean and Lil Wayne. At the time of its release, this mixtape was freely available online as a promotional digital download in the wake of Graduation. While this is my favorite of the 5 mixtapes, it is worth saying that this project, as well as those aforementioned, simply pale in comparison to the rest of Kanye's discography, which is why they are all grouped together in the 15th spot. Coming in at number 15 is Donda 2. Following the release of Jesus is King and his 10th studio album, Donda, Kanye began to spiral into a mental breakdown, leading to several controversial comments, political antics, and musical changes in the coming year. Kanye would make several tweets on many sensitive topics, including exposing the terms of his record deal, bashing his own industry decisions, and announcing a complete withdrawal from the mainstream scene. This led to the release of Donda 2, an unfinished, unmixed sequel to the original Donda record, which was only released via the stem player for $200. Overall, this demo project was nothing special, and although it had potential with its production and list of notable features, the product we all received was anything but polished and memorable. In fact, this makes for one of the most forgetful Ye projects to date, even in comparison to Jesus is King. Tied for 15th place with Donda 2 is Kanye's sequel to his 2024 collab with Ty Dolla $ign, Vultures 2. While this album did get a public release unlike Donda 2, it still retained the same unpolished and forgettable sound. With Vultures 1, at least we had a few good tracks, like F Something, Burn, Problematic, and Carnival, which scored number 1 on the Hot 100. Vultures 2, however, did not have any standout hits, with the best tracks being Slide, Field Trip, and Pride. The album's release also came after news broke of Ye's nitrous addiction, further diminishing his reputation in the public's eye. With all the anti-Semitic controversies, the risk of being blackballed from the industry, and the nitrous-infused chaos that was the Vultures series, it was only a matter of time before Kanye lost his #1 album streak, which unfortunately did happen at the hands of Taylor Swift's Tortured Poets department. For this reason, Vultures 2 is definitely as bad as Donda 2, if not worse, so it's probably for the best that we will not be receiving a Vultures 3. Next up, at number 14 is, you guessed it, Jesus is King. Kanye's 9th studio album, Jesus is King, was released after a hiatus, in which Kanye would go on to scrap many tracks and music videos in the works, including features with Ty Dolla $ign and Nicki Minaj. While many fans waited in anticipation of his legendary album, Yandhi, many wondered if the project would ever be made public. Finally, nearly a year and a half after Kids See Ghosts, Kanye would release his 9th studio album, Jesus is King, announcing the end of his work on Yandhi. This new album would be heavily inspired by Christian gospel music and Kanye's newfound love for God. However, the album was met with harsh criticism, and while I do think the album is better than many gave it credit for, we were all definitely robbed the day Yandhi was scrapped for this subpar Kanye record. Now at number 13, we have the Good Music compilation album, Cruel Summer. Cruel Summer acts as a means of uniting the talent under Good Music to promote the new, yet-to-be-established artists on Kanye's label. This project is far better than the Can't Tell Me Nothing mixtape and could almost be considered a full album in its own right. However, while the production is outstanding at times and the vocals on tracks like Higher sound so grandiose, most of the tracks here are simply forgetful filler on Kanye's ever-growing discography. At number 12, we have one of the most Kanye albums ever released, The Life of Pablo. Undergoing several stylistic shifts and name changes, The Life of Pablo was Kanye's 7th 2016 studio album. While some Ye fans hold this project to high esteems, I personally find that compared to most other projects on his discography, The Life of Pablo seems to lack a consistent production style and vision. With the majority of Kanye's projects influencing the culture and pushing musical bounds with their flawless execution and eye-drawing features, this album just doesn't stand up to works like The College Dropout, Graduation, and My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, which is why I place it here at number 12. Working our way up to number 11 is Kanye's most recent collaborative album, Vultures Volume 1. Released in February of 2024 with Ty Dolla $ign following a rough, highly controversial year for Ye in 2024, which would see his net worth fall greatly as he would lose his deal with Adidas. This also made it very difficult for Ye to find a distributor for his project and nearly impossible to have some samples cleared, as people like Ozzy Osbourne didn't want their name associated with Kanye. However, even through all the hate and negativity, many still found this album to be some of Kanye's best works in a long time, including myself, with several new and old styles explored on this project, as well as a list of notable features, some of Kanye's most introspective lyrics, and tracks like Burn or King that really showed a true return to some of Kanye's older works. This album makes for a solid listening experience that never feels too drug out. In at number 10 is the original Donda. Yes, before the complete disappointment that was Donda 2, we had Kanye's 2021 Donda, titled after his deceased mother. With many Ye fans citing this as his comeback moment after the highly criticized Jesus is King, this project's production definitely doesn't miss, and many of the features were already well-established newcomers in the industry. Acting as Kanye's big return and a means of promoting new generational talent, Donda deserves its spot in the 10th place, arguably higher. Here at number 9 is Ye, released alongside 4 other albums in 2018, including Kids See Ghosts. Ye featured a similar stylistic approach on production, sounding larger than life, grandiose, and almost cinematic in the way the instrumentals and lyrics aligned with the mountain range looking back at you from the artwork. Even though this short project may not have had the most influence on the culture, it helped to farther push mental illness into the forefront of hip-hop and gave us a beautiful 7-song experience. Making its way in at number 8, we have the industrial electronic album that was Yeezus. Yeezus is one of those projects that sounds harsh and gritty, yet consistent all the way through, with many songs acting more as a political or social message rather than catchy tunes and Billboard hits. This project is often either loved or hated by Ye fans. It is one of those that I personally don't revisit often, but I do appreciate the project for what it is and the music it came to inspire, being Kanye's most polarizing work to this date, while also inspiring projects like Cherry Bomb by Tyler the Creator, Whole Lotta Red by Playboi Carti, and Travis Scott's Utopia. It is clear that Yeezus was way ahead of its time, and while it may be a bit of a stretch, it's enough to earn it the 8th spot on this list. And at number 7 is Kanye and Jay-Z's collaborative album, Watch the Throne. Directly following what is considered to be one of Kanye's best musical bodies of work, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, Watch the Throne had a handful of classics and Billboard hits, including The Homies in Paris, which is actually Kanye's second most streamed song, right under Stronger. While I love this record and thought it was worthy of being the follow-up to Ye's first 5 cult classics, I did not find it as enjoyable as other projects on this list, which is why I have to place it in at the number 7 spot. Here we have another collab at number 6 with Kids See Ghosts, the joint album between Kanye West and Kid Cudi, which was also set to have an animated TV series and a sequel album. While nothing else would come of this 7-song project, it did serve as an amazing experience all the way through, taking a similar production approach to Kanye's other 2018 album, Ye, although primarily relying on atmospheric touches and reverbed vocals that surround your head and fill your headphones. The production on this record is phenomenal. For as short as this album is, it is definitely 100% worth the listen, and in my opinion, it is worthy of the 6th spot on Kanye's discography. In 5th place is Juice WRLD's personal favorite, 808s and Heartbreak, inspiring countless modern acts to this day and paving the way for what we now accept as mainstream modern hip-hop. 808s and Heartbreak acts as one of the many staples to Kanye's legendary career. With its abstract production, heavy use of effects like reverb and delay, as well as its creative, almost instrumental use of the human voice and autotune, Kanye's 4th studio album would later go on to entirely change and reshape the culture of rap as a whole. Although not well received at the time, and to some, being the moment hip-hop died, 808s and Heartbreak remains at the pinnacle of modern culture and could almost certainly be higher than the 5th place on this list. At 4th place, we have Late Registration, the follow-up to Kanye's debut soul sample-oriented album. While the production is very similar to that of the College Dropout, some of the songs often take a more downbeat tone with the use of both male and female vocal samples, as well as accompanying Rhodes piano chords that add to the jazzy feel of some tracks, with several notable songs, including a feature from New York's greatest, Nas. Late Registration serves as the perfect sequel to the College Dropout. Although ranking under its debut, Kanye's second album totally deserves more attention, as it is often outshined by its predecessor. Earning the bronze medal at 3rd place is, as aforementioned, The College Dropout. The College Dropout, being Kanye's lyrical debut, is often credited as being one of the greatest hip-hop albums of all time, and in my personal opinion, it has no skips. While its impact on the culture may not be quite as great as 808s and Heartbreak, or its reputation may not be as notorious as that of Graduation, The College Dropout is still a flawless record front to back, filled to the brim with soul samples, chopped drum loops, the perfect accompanying features, and some of Kanye's most memorable tracks and lines. The production and engineering on this album worked together seamlessly to deliver what at the time was one of the most unexpected and beloved hip-hop albums in a time where hardcore gangster rap dominated the scene. The College Dropout still lives on in modern music with artists such as J. Cole, Kendrick Lamar, Logic, and more, often drawing inspiration from the project with the classical chipmunk soul sample beats. In fact, the chipmunk soul sample style is so synonymous with Kanye because of this album that anytime you hear a beat using the technique, you're inclined to think of it as a Kanye West type beat. I myself immediately checked the production credits on such tracks to see if Kanye had a hand in it. Being my personal close second favorite album in Kanye's discography, The College Dropout narrowly missed the second spot on this list, coming in at third place. Nearing the end, we have My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy in second place. Although many Kanye fans would hate me for not putting this album in the top spot, I simply do not favor My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy over the final record on this list. However, with its flawless production, blend of pure hype and melodic elements, the long list of beloved features, as well as some of Kanye's best lyrics to date, this project never fails to deliver, and after every listen, only seems to get better in the eyes of many Ye fans, including myself. I also can't forget to mention the most famous verse on the album, being that of Nicki Minaj on Monster, which is often cited as her best recorded verse ever, with many mainstream classics such as Power, All of the Lights, Runaway, and Hell of a Life. My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy has done more than earn its spot on this list, but has cemented its name in hip-hop as one of the greatest albums to ever be released to the public. While I didn't put this record in at the top spot, I decided to get the opinion of someone who does. Please welcome the homie Slick.
So, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, the Magnum Opus of Kanye's career. Released in 2010, this 13-song album had a lot to live up to. Back in 2009, Kanye had his moment at the Grammys where he went at Taylor Swift, and thus his industry connections, along with some of his fans and even the President of the United States, started to go after him for his comments. So Kanye, of course, he retreated to Hawaii, well, Japan and then Hawaii. And when he got to Hawaii, that was where the idea, and conversely, the project itself was born. Seeing as though Kanye had a lot to live up to, it's no wonder that this album sounds the way it does. From the godlike synths of Power, all the way to the brass and percussion crescendo on All of the Lights, all the way through to the Chris Rock sample on Blame Game. This album has a lot of gems within it. The story of this album is quite interesting. There are many other videos out there that actually catalog the entire thing and go all nerd for it. But I'm just going to summarize it. The story of My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy starts with the rap star who has it all. Back in 2008, he had it all, of course. He was living the high life. And in My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, you start to see how the high life is really not so high. You start to get into the album, going song by song. By the time you get to Runaway, which is Kanye's best song, of course, that's my opinion, the emotional crescendo of the album, that's where you start to see the true mind that Kanye went through during this time. Kanye basically was putting himself in a position where he had to make this album the best album, or all he would be remembered for is the guy who even made the President of the United States hate him. And so, facing being blackballed, he went to Hawaii, got a whole bunch of artists together, and made this disc. And Kanye himself comes with raw delivery, and some of the features also come with their best, except for Jay-Z. Jay-Z's verse on Monster is probably one of the worst. Not because the rapping itself is bad, but you can't tell me that love is the reason that you are this monster. Also, features like Bon Iver, Rihanna, and Alicia Keys at the time were some of the biggest artists out there. Kanye putting these names on at this stage in his career, of course, was a sign of the fact that he wouldn't let himself be blackballed by the industry. There are many arguments out there about the fact that My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy is where new Kanye begins, and that's when people started to miss the old Kanye. However, I believe that Watch the Throne is where that starts. Although My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy was a departure from the previous trajectory of his career, so was 808s and Heartbreak. A lot of people are divisive about this particular topic. However, it cannot be argued My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy is up in the leagues of some of hip-hop's other great Magnum Opus albums like To Pimp a Butterfly or The Blueprint by Jay-Z.
Before we get to our top spot, we have a few honorable mentions with Daytona by Pusha T, Keep That Same Energy by Tiana Taylor, and Nasir by Nas, all produced and engineered by Kanye in 2018, alongside Kids See Ghosts and Ye. I'll also include Utopia by Travis Scott, since much of the inspiration is pulled from scrap Kanye beats and material from Yeezus, as well as some tracks originally intended for Kanye's album Donda. In 2007, Kanye also had a mixtape primarily featuring Mick Boogie, Terry Urban, and the Ninth Wonder called The Graduate. Other honorable mentions include the visual version of Donda, the leaked Jesus is King 2 co-produced by Dr. Dre, and the scrap cult classic that was Yandi. Being a rapper whose unreleased discography is comparable in size to that of his released works, I could easily fill the honorable mentions with more lost projects, but I'll be cutting it short here. And finally, and at the number one spot, we have Kanye's Magnum Opus, Graduation. Being his follow-up to the College Dropout and Late Registration, Graduation would be Kanye's third and final installment to his college-themed album series that would come to an end with the release of 808s and Heartbreak. Being placed in between some of Kanye's best works and some of the greatest albums to ever be released in the 50-plus years of hip-hop, this album had its work cut out for it when attempting to stand out from the rest of Ye's discography. Straying away from the typical chipmunk soul sample style of the College Dropout and Late Registration, Graduation would take a more electronic approach on music with a lot of synth work, hard-hitting groovy drums, and EDM house samples on songs like Stronger, which quickly became Kanye's most streamed track. With an unskippable track list and unforgettable hits such as Good Morning, I Wonder, Can't Tell Me Nothing, Barry Bonds, and Flashing Lights, almost every song on this album hits it out of the ballpark. Not only that, but the cultural significance is unmatched by the rest of Ye's discography, as Graduation would release alongside 50 Cent's Curtis, outselling its competitor by a landslide. This would ultimately go down in history as the moment hip-hop shifted from its hardcore gangster rap roots to a more creative, artistic realm that would change the course of not only rap music, but the history of music as a whole. And with that, we come to a close. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, don't forget to subscribe and click all those fancy buttons to keep up with my future content. If you want to see the unedited version of this, please visit my Patreon, link in the description. I have a mixtape and album dropping this year for those that care. I do appreciate all the support, and I'll see you in the next one.
I know he's gonna wild out and he's gonna do something crazy. Everybody wants to know what I would do if I didn't win. I guess we'll never know.